Hey family, are we rolling? Let me have a look. Yeah, looks like we are. Okay, so here comes another speed demon on my tail. I'm telling you folks, these roads are no joke. I've driven on much worse, but you know, if you're accustomed to people using any semblance of common sense on the road, forget about it. Taking over here is what it is, right? Is what it is. Que será, será. So I just wanted to give a little postscript to the video I posted the other day with regards to I'm not sure it was one or another of my as usual politically incorrect outside the norm divergent behavior disorder was another name they slapped on me. Now they got different names. I always got to change names just to throw you off. But basically, yes, that perspective. So let's see. I don't even remember what we were talking about. Oh yes. Now I don't recall the name of the subject, but I do recall the presentation had some references in it to the story in the Bible called Job, and how the sons were eating, drinking, and being merry with the daughters, and then, by themselves at first, and then with the daughters. So, just to put this into some more context, back in the day, right? Back in the day when these stories were first being put to paper, you know, at least a couple thousand years ago, and in many cases, in the Old Testament cases, long before that, right? So don't try to be careful not to apply contemporary, you know, so-called modern day paradigms, perceptions, boots on the ground, whatever, observations. Don't get too caught up in that because, you know, it was different back then. So, you know, it's always important to put things into context when we're trying to make sense of them, right? So, now, with regards to the male in the household, in this case, it would be Job and his sons, who, from the sounds of it, had their own house. Like his children had their own house, and then maybe Job had a separate house outside for him and his wife, and maybe the daughters had a separate house. I don't know. I'm not gonna split frog's hairs. I'm just gonna say that because everything is rhetorical, right? Remember that when you're reading these ancient stories, things are rhetorical, and so much has been lost, and purposefully so in many cases through translation. If you want to know more about that, look at chapter 11, verse 7 of Genesis. Now, or just study a few foreign languages and you'll see what I mean. So, yes, things are lost in translation, things are taken out of context, right? And that's why it's important to remember that these stories are told from an allegorical sort of, it's not meant to be taken literally, right? Like, every word for word in the current context is / language / version of that language's dictionary. Just to try to keep an open mind. That's a general good rule of thumb with regards to any field of practice or study is to just keep an open mind about these kinds of things. I just wanted to break it down a little bit more and juxtapose, or rather, let me go back real quick. It's, you know how you can tell something is kind of like if your intuition doesn't tell you, you know how you can, like a good rule of thumb to figure out whether something is a, I don't know, theoretical caca, let's say, or the theory of the day. And a universal truth, like something that's universally true regardless of what your theories or opinions or perspectives about it are. So and one of the things I like to use in this rule of thumb measurement, to try to, if I'm just utterly confused and I can't tap into my tuition whatsoever, and I'm just so on the fence about whatever it is that I'm being presented with, well, then I just take the theory and put it into practice. I apply it to, of course, the usual. I'm gonna flick this guy, let him go. Pardon me. We could put it into the context of the usual, passing, like, let's say, the scientific method of being observable, measurable, and repeatable. But not just within a certain control group. That's the first indication, is, does it pass the scientific method? And number two, when it's repeatable, that means it needs to be repeatable outside of a controlled study, outside of the laboratory, in everything. And the more things that you can see that pattern is repeated, you're on to something, kids. You're on to something. Don't believe all that nonsense you hear in your science class now. So just, use these rules of thumb, right? Does it pass the scientific method, right? And is that repeatable last phase of the scientific method? Is the possibilities for repeating and receiving the same sort of pattern, the same feedback, if it's applicable across the board, in pretty much everything you see, well, then bloody hell, it's the truth. As far as we can tell. I'm not saying we'll ever know everything there is to know, but it's about as close as you're ever going to hope to get on the planet, I believe. So, and then one of the tools I like to use in order to convey these things, in case the words are lost on you, in case you're not a person who learns by way of words and you're more inclined to look at pictures, like symbols and patterns and paintings and things like that, right? That's cool too. We'll try to put one in the thumbnail, see how long it holds up. I don't know if there's any way you can, like, copy and paste it, or no, you don't need to. Look, you don't need to. You can just type it in and look for yourself. Filter the search results to images, and look for something that's called the Chakana, Chakana, I believe. Another version of this symbol that represents something is just as ancient. It's been around just as many thousands of years. Is called the swastika, and now you know why they try to turn everybody off of that with all the movies and propaganda and all the pseudo-Jew holocaust stuff. Did I just say something else that's politically incorrect? Forgive me for informing myself and speaking outside of the dangerous crowd mentality and belief system. So, anyway, I digress. Swastika, the Chakana, you can find this symbol throughout the cultures, all over the globe, and throughout the centuries. So, maybe, I don't know, I'm just saying, maybe we could look into symbols. Of course we can, because you know what they say, a picture tells 1,000 words. And so does a symbol too. You know, it's because basically, you know, it's a visual kind of stimulation. It's another form of stimuli. And then if you see what these symbols were, you know, if you want to know what they're more about, because they're very involved, very in-depth information surrounding this kind of stuff. But suffice to say, and if nothing else, this thing was considered the like the universal truth and the way of life. I don't know any other way to put it, but basically what you've got, whether it's depicted or not, it's not necessarily depicted in the swastika version, but in the Chicana version it is. It's depicted as a feminine in the middle. It's a circle in the middle. The feminine, the circle, right? The circle of life. In the middle of the symbol. And then on the outside on the outside it's the square, the angles of pain, as I like to call it, when I see a concrete box and I think about the painful, if not deleterious, results that living in with such a lack of imagination, geometrically speaking, being robbed of all the potential that we have if we're exposed to these kinds of things on a daily basis. And if we live and sleep under these kinds of roofs where we're incorporating sacred geometry into our homes and things, right? So, yes, it's a circle, and then on the outside you've got these angles which represent the male, the phallic, right? The line, right? Not the circle, but the line. And the way it comes together, and it forms a boundary around the female. This is symbolic for this is the role of man, to be masculine. Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna say it. Even to the point of so-called toxic masculinity, because again, that's a perspective, and it sounds a lot like the group collective perspective. So I'm not inclined to like really pay that too much attention. I was in the military for 21 years. Trust me, I completely understand what it's like to be surrounded by not just, well, I just suffice to say, you're preaching to the choir if you want to talk about masculinity and the misapplications of it. But I'm not here to talk about the misapplications. I'm just here to say that in the symbol you can see the way that like the universal truth depicted in this symbol that the ancestors understood was the miracle of life, because you've got to have the feminine on the inside, not out front running for president, not out front of the man doing really nothing. I'm not saying you shouldn't have your own hobbies and interests and pursuits of income and whatever, fill in the blank on the side. But when it comes time to having kids and stuff, just make a decision. Which is more important? Don't try to juggle both, because the child requires all of your time and attention. And it's just the way it is. And if you don't want to deal with that, then just, postpone it until your career pursuits are fulfilled. But the point being is that the woman's role and position is back in the background, protected, because of the sacred nature of the feminine and the powerful potential that circle of life has for giving birth literally and figuratively into the world. That it's protected by the masculine. So that's why they say behind every good man you'll find an even better woman. Well, and that's how it works. That's the teamwork of it. Now, I'm not saying that 110% of the time that should always be the case in every little frickin' aspect of your relationship. Of course, I'm not making such broad brush statements. I'm making a simple observation that right now in Mexico, we're stuck with a female president. And shit's about to get real, yo. Because, I mean, when she just... Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive and believe that we can live outside of natural law in the way that, you know, nature intended it. You don't see animals doing this, so why should, if we should take an example from our animal kingdom. I'm just saying, like, could you imagine? Well, the first person I would vote for is the Chachalaca, I can never say that name right, but it's that bird that goes, laka, 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 really super loud in the background, that one. I call him El Pájaro Político, because he just talks so loud, like you can hear him over everybody else in the jungle. But I would vote for that bird 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times over before I would vote for a human to rule over me and govern my mind. And an infinite number of gazillions of times would I vote for that bird over a female to reign over me. Oh my goodness. Anyway, it's all in divine order. I just wanted to share that with you as a little bit of a way to, like a cheat sheet, if you want to call it that. If you want to, like, if your intuition is just for whatever reason completely, you just have no idea, your heart's not telling you anything, then just use that rule of thumb. Does it adhere to natural law? Does it adhere to hermetic principles? And is it, you know, if those words are too much, then you can see these kinds of things depicted in the symbology, the Chakana and the swastika. It's like this is the way it goes. It's the design for so many other things too. So many other things. Like I said, universal truth. When you can apply something and see a pattern across the fields in each and every control group that you have, chances are that's your more appropriate theory to adopt. Until, of course, something else comes along, you know, and give it a shot and analyze it and be always ready to change your mind and adopt a new perspectives. That's the true sign of intelligence. But don't fall for this nonsense where people, like, it's just so ridiculous. A woman for president. Oh, lordy, lordy. All right, family. I'm going to leave that with you. And then we'll do some movie reviews. Something a little bit more lighthearted. Until then, ciao for now.